Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar focused on understanding the end user's needs. I'm Jackie Garcia, and I'm part of the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge team and the facilitator of this webinar today. While we are waiting for all the attendees to join the webinar, I just want to share with you a reminder that these webinars are designed for the participants of the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge, which is an initiative led by the Efficiency for Access with support from Engineers Without Borders UK. This webinar is being recorded and the cameras and microphones are disabled except for those of the main speakers, but you all can use the chat box to make any comments or questions for our speakers at any time, and we will discuss them at the end of the presentations. But first, I would like to ask you a question. You will have a pop-up window on your screen for you to answer the question. So the question is, have you ever used an off-grid appliance, whether at home, at family, or at a friend's house, or maybe at your university? Regardless of the type of appliances, just think for a moment, how was your experience last time you were using one? Feel free to share your comments in the chat box. So I will give you some time just to respond to the question. Very interesting answers. Yeah. Well, 33% say yes at home, 22% at family, 22% at family or friend's house, and 44% has not used an off-grid appliance. Energy efficient appliances can help reduce operating expenses and increase revenues for operators, and also improve livelihoods for customers. And this webinar, we are going to focus on the end users and the importance of understanding their needs. Our three speakers will share the knowledge and expertise on impact measurement and customer insight, understanding the end user's need with an example from Pakistan, and how to understand the end users. The Q&A section at the end of the presentation is your time to ask the speakers your questions. So please share your questions and comments in the chat box throughout the webinar. And at the end, you will have the opportunity to give your opinion in a very short survey on your experience on this webinar. Now, I would like to introduce you our speakers today. Pranav Sridhar is a senior associate at 60 Decibels, where he helps impact funds, non-profit and social businesses measure and manage their impact. He works closely with several mini-grids, solar home system and solar appliance companies in South Asia and East Africa to help them listen to their customers. Pranav is also the co-founder of One Day Health, a UN and Queen's Commonwealth recognized network of primary health centers in northern Uganda. He has a Master's of Management Studies from the Fuqua School of Business and Bachelor from Shiv Nadar University. Muhammad Sheriar is founder and managing director at Harness Energy. The company sells high-quality solar products, including solar lanterns, solar home systems, and solar fans to low-income Pakistanis. He has over 9 years of work experience in the rural economy, focused primarily in the irrigation and energy sectors. At Energy and Harness Energy, he's in charge of business development, institutional partnerships, and strategy. Sheriar studied economics at the Duke University of Fulbright Scholarship. And apart from a passion for renewable energy, his interests include evolutionary psychology, astronomy, and cricket. Katheryn Owens, Katheryn serves as head of MKR Labs, dedicated research and development arm of the market-leading connected asset financing company. In her role, she oversees the development of early-stage product conceptualization to advance the company's next generation as pay-as-you-go assets. Prior to MKR, she worked at the Environmental Defense Fund, where she shaped public policy to advance the emerging clean energy economy and adoption of frontier technologies. Katheryn earned an BA in Business Administration from Rhodes College and her MBA from London Business School. And now, without further ado, I will give the floor to Pranav.
Thanks so much, Jackie. I'll just wait for the presentation to come up before I get started.
Can you see the presentation?
I still see the quick poll, Jackie, not the presentation.
Oh, I'm really sorry. Sorry. Can you see it now?
Nope. Yes, I can now, Jackie. Thanks so much.
Okay.
And thanks so much, Jackie, for that warm introduction, and a very, a big hello to everyone. I'm Pranav, and I'm very, very excited to be speaking with all of you about the work we do at 60 Decibels, and particularly how that can really help you and all of you really understand the end customer as you design really impactful and meaningful products and businesses in the future. So that's me. I'm very excited to get started. So Jackie, if you could move to the next slide. Before we actually dive into our approach at 60 Decibels, I wanted to share with all of you some meaningful data, which I think is particularly useful given the current COVID-19 pandemic. So over the past 6 months at 60 Decibels, we've been trying to listen to customers who were otherwise underheard. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we found that while there was a lot of data through online surveys about the impact that the pandemic was having on customers and individuals and communities around the world, oftentimes those without access to technology often get unheard. And so in 60 Decibels, we began trying to understand the impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable. And what you see on your screen is a chart that captures data from over 20,000 interviews from over 19 countries. And what we asked customers, specifically in the off-grid energy space, was about trying to understand their poverty levels, the changes in their financial situation, the coping mechanisms they were using at this time, as well as changes in food consumption as a result of the pandemic. And on the screen, we find the chart has in red those who are extremely or very vulnerable, and to the right, customers who are actually coping reasonably well with the pandemic. And essentially what we see is that these results vary widely by country. And so as you can see in Rwanda, about 53% of customers reported being either extremely or very vulnerable, whereas in Tanzania, that was under 5%. And we feel like this data is particularly impactful, not just for organizations and social businesses trying to serve off-grid energy customers, but also governments and policymakers who can really identify the solutions that can have the greatest impact on those who are most underserved. Jackie, if you can move to the next slide. What I want to emphasize here was also some of the research that we've done on trying to understand customer satisfaction levels across the off-grid energy space. So in a lot of our surveys, we ask customers about the Net Promoter Score, or the NPS, which is a common proxy for customer satisfaction and loyalty. We ask customers how likely they are to recommend a company's products or services to a friend or family member, and use that to provide companies a score between -100 to +100, the positive score being better. And what I want you to just focus on here is that we've actually presented these insights at a subsector level. So what you see is that solar lanterns, solar lantern customers report a very high NPS of 67, whereas customers in the mini grid space report a slightly lower NPS of 30. Now, a couple of explanations for this is, particularly for solar lantern customers, this is often their first modern energy product, and because there's a tremendous substitution impact of them going from another source of light, say like kerosene lamps, to a much better one like solar lanterns. They typically report very high levels of satisfaction. And particularly for all of your interest, the appliances NPS, as you can see, is about 38. And our understanding through a lot of customer research is that this is primarily because the appliances space is still very nascent, And oftentimes, the challenges that companies and customers are facing are first-time challenges, and so taking them and solving them often takes longer. And second is that because some of these products are more early, we find that they're also targeting a slightly higher income segment within the off-grid energy space, which often comes with perhaps increased expectations and sometimes lower customer satisfaction. So with that, I just want to move to just emphasizing to all of you where our data really comes from. So Jackie, if you could move to the next slide. I just want to emphasize that all of our data and all of the results we present are essentially a synthesis of many conversations, many interviews that we've had with off-grid energy customers across the world. And so it's because we have these conversations and interviews with the end customers of off-grid energy companies that we're able to provide insights that we hope will help all of you design products that are more effective and can have a high impact. So with that, Jackie, if you can move to the next slide again, I just wanted to give all of you a quick snapshot of who we are. 60 Decibels is a customer insights and impact measurement company, and we help impact investors, funders, foundations, social businesses, and nonprofits measure the impact of their work by speaking directly to their end customers. We do this as of today, we've actually completed over 130,000 interviews in over 40 countries around the world. And all of these interviews are conducted in local languages by in-country researchers with standardized survey sets, which not just allows us to tell an organization how well they're doing or the impact they're having on their customers, but also be able to compare that with other similar organizations, either in the same sector or in the same geography. So they can learn best practices and keep improving from there. If we can move to the next slide. Jackie, I just want to sort of share a couple of some of the results and the insights that we're seeing in the off-grid energy space at this point. Great. So a couple of the key highlights that we see. The first up, in our work with over 35,000 off-grid energy customers, we find that over 9 in 10 report very positive quality of life improvements as a result of their energy product. We find that these are typically to do with light, with improved access to lighting, reliability, and convenience. Customers often also speak about improved incomes, reduced costs, and health improvements. For most of these customers, this is their first time accessing an energy product. And while these are really positive outcomes, what we do find is that most of the energy customers that we speak with on average are reaching about 37% of people living in poverty, whereas on average in these countries, about 60% of the population is living in poverty, which suggests that companies have an opportunity to increase their reach to low-income customers. Another challenge that comes up in the space is the fact that 1 in 3 customers report experiencing a challenge with their product or service, and 2/3 of these challenges go unresolved, which means there's potential for negative word of mouth. It's also the fact that if a customer does not have a fully functioning product, they don't actually experience the full benefit of it. And that's something that with improved customer service, companies can improve customer experience overall. And the last point on the overall space is the fact that over-indebtedness is currently a small problem, but with the COVID-19 pandemic, over-indebtedness levels have gone up significantly, and an area for companies to support their customers with. And so the last 2 slides that I just wanted to move to, are just about, Jackie, if you could move to the next slide. I just wanted to sort of lay out a framework for the appliances space as well. So a very quick introduction to the 60 Decibels Impact Index, where we using data around who the customer is, which is whether or not companies are reaching low-income customers, the what of the impact, which is essentially whether or not they're experiencing quality of life improvements, and third being contribution, which is this the first time a customer is receiving a product, and if they have access to alternatives or no. We've created an index that helps us define an overall impact of a particular company. And so essentially, through this triangle, the idea that we're trying to the message we're trying to convey is that larger triangles, meaning higher poverty reach, higher impact, as well as higher contribution, and smaller triangles are lesser impact. And so if we move to the next slide, Jackie, I just wanted to mention this in the context of appliances specifically. So what you see on the left is the 60 Decibels Impact Index for our work in the appliances space. And what we find is that while appliances companies are high on contribution, which means that the customers of appliances companies are typically receiving these products for the first time and don't have access to very many alternatives. However, appliances companies are reaching less low-income customers, which means a higher income segment compared to other off-grid energy companies. And second, the fact that the impact outcomes are still not as deep as some of the other products and services in the off-grid space. And so in the last few minutes, I just wanted to quickly share some of the insights we're seeing in the appliances space. The first one being the fact that in solar TVs, for instance, customers are reporting much lower stress levels and increased levels of information and education because of their solar TV. With solar water pumps, customers report increased incomes and specifically mention a reduction in their workload and time spent in irrigation from before and after using the product. Refrigerators, while they are being used for a wide variety of refrigeration purposes, are still leading to slightly higher levels of over-indebtedness. And clean cooking companies are in a challenging space because in addition to product uptake, they also require to make behavior change and are being very effective in targeting women. So this was sort of an overview of the insights that we're seeing, both in the off-grid energy space as well as in the appliances space. And so, Jackie, if you can move to the last slide. Just want to emphasize that we will be sharing a number of resources like our Why Off-Grid Energy Matters report that has these insights in greater detail, as well as our COVID dashboard that gives you live updates about the impact of COVID on customers around the world. And so with that, I'll just pause and happy to take any questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pranav, for this excellent presentation. And now, Shuriar, if you're ready for your presentation.
Yeah, Jackie, I'm ready. Can you see me?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for logging in. This is Shuriar from Harness Energy. I think just before I jump into the presentation, I think it's important to recognize the work that the Efficiency for Access Coalition is doing. Because I think ultimately we have to move above and forward from solar lanterns, because energy access is a ladder, and if we have to provide tier 2 and tier 3 reliable tier 2 and tier 3 energy access by 2030, I think the focus has to be on appliances. Appliances, household appliances, productive use appliances. So just wanted to emphasize that it's about time that the work on this has started. So we basically work in Pakistan. We're a sort of solar distribution company. We provide products to last mile customers, to off-grid customers, and this is just one of the sort of like typical village meetings that we do. We ask customers about how everything is going, how the harvest was, what they're doing these days, and what kind of products they're interested in. So yeah, next, if we can move to the next slide. I'll be just sharing because we're like a for-profit company working in the market, so we'll be sharing our learnings that we've had from the field for the past 4 years. I think product design is a very crucial component when it comes to the off-grid energy sector. But there's a bunch of challenges involved in product design phase. First, the main priority is that you have to find that sweet spot that's between product design and commercial viability. Because if you've created like a crazy engineering marvel kind of product, but if it's not affordable, if it's not reaching the people who actually need it, and it's not commercially viable, then generally it'll be one of those products that'll just be left on the shelf and people forget about it. So just to move forward on some challenges that generally we've seen in the product design phase. First, that product design and innovation and the commercial viability of that specific product. Generally, these two competencies, they develop independently. Why? Well, firstly, because the people who are in charge of these departments, engineers generally, not to generalize, but generally speaking, what we've seen is they're passionate about machines, numbers, circuits and electronics. But these most of the times these people are not the ideal people to market the end product to the customers, because you have to use the language that's being used on the field. You have to have that human connection, behavior change campaigns. And also because manufacturing and marketing are completely different ball games when it comes to the off-grid sector. Then you also have to ask yourself, why are you designing the product? Is there a need for this product, or are you just doing this as a sort of like a research project, a PhD thesis, Will the product have a market feasibility when it's eventually ready? Of course, a very important question is who will the end customer be? Like, let's say if you develop clean cook stoves, I think you can squarely focus your attention on people who are using biomass or cow dung or briquettes for fuel. You won't really be targeting them to middle class, upper middle class, urban centers. So of course you have to have an idea about the customer profile as well. What their income levels are, what's the family size, and what their sort of preferences are when it comes to energy consumption. And of course you have to have a very good idea about the value chain. I'll give you a very good example. Everyone is familiar about solar lanterns. So like more than 90% of the production of solar lights, portable solar lights and solar lanterns is done in Guangdong province in China, in Shenzhen mostly. But all the factories that produce these products they almost always export their products. So these products are not needed in Shenzhen, they're not needed in Shanghai, not in Singapore. The end customer that they're targeting are poor income, low income families in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. That's where the biggest sort of off-grid chunk of the population is. Now, there's a bunch of products available to alleviate energy poverty, no doubt about that, like hundreds of products available off the shelf. But still, despite 15 years of work in the field, we still have like hundreds of millions of people who are living in energy poverty. Why? Because product design is not just one phase of the value chain. You have to understand distribution, you have to find local partners, you have to see whether the product that's sort of being successful in Kenya, will it be a good fit in the Indian market or the Pakistani market. So it's very important to while you're designing the product, while you're working on the engineering part, you also focus on the value chain. And if you just see this green arrow, we've seen that when you're talking about the bottom quartile or the so-called bottom of the pyramid customers income wise, it's always good to focus on the bottom up approach rather than a top down approach. Because when you get customer feedback, when you have a pulse on what's going on in the field, and then you design your product accordingly, that of course has a much broader impact. One example we've seen that so Pakistan and India, from what we've judged, are on a slightly higher trajectory on the energy ladder when it comes to East Africa, and weather-wise they're really hot. So basically, we've seen that fans are actually demand drivers of solar products in India and Pakistan, unlike in East Africa, where companies have been really successful in selling solar lanterns. So solar lanterns have not been, at least in Pakistan, sales have not shot up, primarily because people, have basic lighting needs and they're in need of a fan. Anyway, so move to the next slide. So I'll just give you some examples of successful products that we've seen on the field, and I think these products will be visible in the entire subcontinent, like Bangladesh, Nepal, India, Pakistan, and even in a bunch of West African countries. First, you can categorize the product into existing products that fit the customer needs. So you see that this small shampoo sachet that you see, so this will not be, you won't see this in markets in Western countries or high income countries. So this is basically a trick that companies came up with when they were selling like soaps and shampoos and even tea for that matter. So what happens is, usually in Europe and the US and other high income countries, you see that a bottle of shampoo, you go to a store, the bottle of shampoo costs like $4, $6, $10, whatever, and you buy it and then you use it for like a month to 3 months, whatever. But when you are talking about people living with very meager income, and a bunch of their income goes to energy, to meeting their energy needs and their food needs, then they were not going to spend like $5 on a bottle of shampoo. So these companies realized that, and they came up with much smaller versions of these items. So let's say this small sachet of shampoo, this is like 5 of these packets will fit in the palm of your hand, and the cost of one of these guys is like 5 cents, 4 cents. So people who have sort of erratic income, and they don't have like a running salary as such, because that's how agricultural income works. So they can spend as they have the money. They don't need to spend like on shampoo like 4 months worth of shampoo in advance. So this is one of the really good products. And similarly, they've come up with small like 5 cents, 6 cents products that have like tea in them, and these kind of like fast moving products. Of course, the feature phone has been a big sort of driver of growth and mobile money. I think if we if the world had not if prices of phones had not dropped in the past 20 years, then mobile money, communication, and access to remote communities would have been a much bigger problem today that we have. And then, of course, if we see about new products that are designed for specific needs, the story of, I think, D-Light's founders is a very inspirational one. They sort of invented the solar lantern as we know it today, because they were working in Africa, in East Africa, and they experienced that people were using like terrible alternatives to meet their basic lighting needs, kerosene, candles, and used batteries. And so when you look back at 15 years before today, I mean, at the prices of LEDs and batteries and solar panels were not as low as they are today. So it was Sam's and Ned's, vision that, led them to sort of innovate on this product, and they came up with this beautiful design that I think now costs $10. And these products are replacing like millions of liters of kerosene and tens of thousands of candles every day. So that's a really good thing to focus on. Let's say if you know about customer needs, what they need, and then you again work on the bottom-up approach. And then there's a bunch of products that are affordable, that most of the people have access to, are because of economies of scale, like a $300 motorcycle. So basically, some of you want to focus on your focus energies on designing a product, on making a product, sectors like education, energy, healthcare, connectivity, and financial inclusion are sectors that have a great impact on the field. So you can look at towards that. Next slide, please, Jackie. I'll just focus on briefly the experiences that we've learned. Like solar fans, we got this really efficient solar fans from China, but when they went in the field, when customers used them, we realized that the airflow was too low, so we had to work on the airflow and the motor simultaneously. So that's something that we've learned. And then refrigerators, we've seen that there's a huge demand for household refrigerators, but affordability is a big problem, because a lot of appliance makers, they do not work on DC compressors, and so it's really difficult to scale up the market. So if we can just move to the next slide, it's just basically self-explanatory. And yeah, I'm done from here. And the last slide just contains some information if anyone wants to get in touch. Yeah, this is sort of just the troika that you can focus on. Customer feedback, and customer feedback is an essential part of all the entire value chain. Yeah, the last slide just has some information on what we do and how you can get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahryar, for this presentation. I like a lot the sweet spot, name it. So to all the participants, please mail your questions, put the speakers on the spot. It's your opportunity, and we will go to all the questions in the Q&A. So now, Katheryn, is your time.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you to all the students who've joined us today, and also to obviously my fellow panelists. It's kind of nice, actually. I'm following Mohammed. I think I'm definitely kind of dovetailing, especially around like the design thinking and really understanding how you can sort of synthesize maybe your research to really kind of feed into your product design. So quick introduction. So I'm Katheryn Owens. I'm head of the research and development team at MKOPA, and MKOPA is you might kind of really think of MKOPA in the frame of us being an off-grid solar provider. So we kind of came to market 10 years ago, pioneering the pay-as-you-go business model. And we first came in with solar systems, and then that scaled up to be solar systems bundled with TVs, and then solar systems bundled with refrigerators. And now we are selling pay-as-you-go smartphones, which is sort of a Nokia or Samsung device, which has software embedded onto the device itself, which will actually enable MKOPA to open up that line of credit to those who have been financially excluded, and in times of non-payment can put the phone in lock mode. But Labs is a really fun team to work on, because we are tasked with figuring out what is going to be the next generation of pay-go assets that we bring to market. And so I like to think that we're the team that likes to design the right thing, and we like to design it right, so customers always love MKOPA. So next slide, please. So if I think sometimes R&D kind of has like a lot of elusive meaning behind it, but what R&D really is really kind of figuring out what are the big problems that we want to tackle in the market. So what are kind of like the big pain points that our customers are feeling today, and what might be desirable solutions that they would adopt to alleviate those problems and actually kind of provide a value add to their lives in terms of, you know, money saved, time saved, overall just kind of like aspiration that feels that's close to their heart. And then R&D is also then figuring out, okay, what new technologies can be brought to market, and then also finally understanding how viable and scalable and profitable would those new technologies be. But we very much, I just want to emphasize, especially as all the students on this call and kind of embark on the design challenge, that you really have to start with the human side of things. Like you really, start with what's desirable. And, kind of famously in the words of Einstein, he said, if you have an hour to think about a problem, I will spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem itself, and I will think of 5 minutes thinking about the solution, right? And the solution is really going to be the feasibility side of this Venn diagram and the viability side of this diagram, right? 95% of your time should be focused on what's desirable for the human. And to do that, you really have to listen again, iterate, and you kind of just keep going through this whole journey. And which we can, if you move on to the next slide, Jacqueline, is further illustrated with the double diamond, which is really kind of like the bread and butter framework that Labs always falls back on when we are thinking about different concepts and prototypes that we want to test in the market. So how does this relate to understanding the end user? So design thinking is kind of more of a philosophy than like a process itself. But it very much starts with identifying customers' pain points and thinking about, again, sort of going back to like 55 minutes is just thinking about the pain points. 5 minutes is then thinking about potential solutions for that, right? And so if we start along this double diamond, the first place you want to start is just with the general problem, right? And then your thinking should get big, right? It really should just start to becoming like a wider and wider funnel of ideas that can go in, or like at least this is the listening section, right? What are the insights and what is the information that the customers are telling you as you really start to discover more and more about this problem? And once you've kind of thought, okay, but I think I've exhausted all the discovery stage, like I've learned everything I think I can from customers around this specific problem, then you start to converge your ideas, right? And you start to find what actually maybe some of those solutions are. And you start to develop some prototypes to stress test your initial hypotheses and the technology that you have in mind, right? And this is a little bit like, I'm sure a lot of you are students and you've taken lots of science classes, we very much think about a hypothesis-led approach, right? I don't want to start with answers, right? I just want to start with vague ideas of being like, I think this is the right way to go. I think this might be a solution, but I have to test it to know, right? And in that testing, I'm going to learn a little bit more. I'm going to go back to my discovery phase, right? This is an iterative journey, so you will always be flexing in between discover and define until you can be able to finally get actually to a point where you're really starting to, you've been listening, you've been testing, you've been iterating, and your concept is getting more and more refined and it's getting better shaped, and customers are going to start telling you like, okay, yeah, actually this is solving my problem, right? So you keep testing those concepts to ensure there's fit, there's impact, and scale. And that fit, impact, and scale is really kind of going back to that original Venn diagram I showed before, right? Is it desirable? Is it feasible? Is it viable? And at a certain point, after you've done a lot of that testing and you've been converging a lot of your ideas, you're going to get to the point where you have the problem is very defined. And now you're ready at a point when you can start to really develop that solution. And then after even more testing, you can go to a point where you can really start delivering what will finally be a specific solution that you can bring to market. It is a journey. It can be sometimes mind-boggling. Sometimes you just want to like throw ideas out the window. It can be very frustrating. But I have some tools I wanted to walk you through today that I think can help you be able to synthesize a lot of the research that you could be doing in the field to really to hone in on both the left side of this double diagram, the discover and the define stage. Jacqueline, if you can move on to the next slide for me. Oh, let me just, I guess it's a little bit of a point of pride for MKR Labs. So as I was kind of contextualizing at the beginning, MKR Solar came to market, gosh, about 10 years ago. I'm happy to say that earlier this week, we reached our 1 millionth customer. So it was really, really, we have been celebrating internally on reaching that tremendous milestone. But it's taken a lot to be able to get to that 1 millionth customer. And we've certainly been testing and building out a wider set of products that continue to address different customer needs. So first, again, it was just the solar lighting systems. And then eventually we said, like, okay, actually we can, if we think about, we can making a TV that's really high efficient and we don't need such a big battery. And then we can bring to market a pay-as-you-go solar powered TV, which eventually won E4A's Global Leap Award. So definitely that was a great sort of badge of honor. And we were really pleased to win that again after years of research development. We brought to market the industry's first fully integrated solar powered refrigerator after about doing two to 3 years of R&D to figure out how to bring the efficiency or bring up the efficiency of a refrigerator compressor so that it could be completely powered by solar and by battery, which also won Fast Company's world-changing idea of this year. And the most recent thing that we brought to market, 2 minutes, gosh, is a pay-as-you-go smartphone. So really quickly, Jacqueline, if you can move on to the next slide. I want to walk you through some of the additional tools to really help you get into the heart and mind of customers, right? So that you can finally design for the end product. So a few of these, and which are further illustrated in the subsequent slides, along with kind of the resource slide, so you can learn more, are these. So if I think about how do I get into the emotional context and the fabric of a customer, I definitely want to think about user personas, right? These are very kind of formulaic personas. You can capture a lot of the information around who your target customer is, right? And that way ensures that all of your team members or product teams within companies are making sure that they are delivering with customers in mind and they know exactly who they're designing for. So when they make feature changes or something like that, they can always fall back on the common tool to say, like, would this customer appreciate that? Another way to really, once you've done a lot of your market research, no doubt you'll be sitting on a mountain of qualitative data, right? A lot of customer voice insights. How do you synthesize that, right? Customer journey maps are phenomenal at basically mapping out what does a day in the life of each of these personas look like, and you'll be able to understand actually what are the pains and gains that they experience throughout the day, and how does your product begin to address some of the issues, and how does it start to shape actually what their day looks like. And certainly when you have a prototype in mind, or even if you don't have a prototype in mind, but you need actually specific insights onto how customers might use that product, think about games you can play with the customers, right? They might not be able to tell you exactly sort of wattage they need to power a certain appliance, but you can actually start to understand from customers with games what might be some trade-offs between different product features that you want to put in your product and whether customers will actually value them. And some of the other three tools, which are a little bit more analytical, are certainly our customer surveys. And then when you do have a prototype, do a pilot test with your customers, right? That you won't know how customers are going to use the product itself until you put it in their hands. And then finally, prioritize who you target. So segmentation is a great way to really kind of boil down, once you've done a market sizing, then figure out actually who are like the big segments that I want to start targeting for, and understanding actually what's the viability and scale potential of any by going after one segment versus another, and then how do you design with that segment in mind. There are some subsequent slides beyond this, which kind of go into a little bit more, they show you some of these tools specifically, and then the last slide will just give you some more resources that you can play around with. But I hope that helps. Yeah, so this would be kind of a type of customer journey map. So I show you these to give you a little bit some templates, or at least how MKR Labs has approached some of these design tools. But I hope these are very kind of like practical tools that you can really put in practice as you go through your own challenge. And I'll end there for the sake of time.
Thank you, Katheryn, for this presentation. And congratulations for the milestone of the 1 million customer.
Thank you.
So thank you all for your excellent and informative presentations. I hope the attendees have enjoyed as much as as me and learned something new today. And now I would like to open the floor to questions from our participants. So please share your questions to our speakers on the chat. In the meantime, I have some questions here. What do you see are the key steps students participating in the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge should take to ensure they understand the end users' needs? I know we've been discussing briefly today, but if you can give like a summary of key steps, I don't know if who wants to take this call. Some of the presenters who want to reply.
Sure, Jackie. Hi, this is Pranav again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First off, I just first off really enjoyed, hearing both Katheryn and Sharyar's presentations and understanding how sort of they really take the customer or the user-centric approach in designing the products. So, just wanted to share that, and that was really, really helpful. To answer your question in a summary, I think, at least in our experience, I think one of the things that I would just suggest, given our work at 60 decibels, is that I think there's two elements to that. One is sort of just really sort of going out there and speaking to customers in the space more broadly to understand specific challenges or pain points, as Sharyar mentioned, that they're experiencing. So differences in geography, differences in subsectors, so something that might work in India or Pakistan, not working in Kenya or Tanzania. But I also think that one of the things that at least that that we've found is that if you actually identify specific metrics to track after the product has been launched, or that you've actually started serving customers, then consistently tracking those specific customer metrics over time is something that provides companies significant value. So a specific example of that, for instance, is we did work with Solar Now, which is a solar home systems company in Uganda. And in our research with them, one of the things we found was a very simple design change. So in the beginning, what they were doing was actually providing a solar home system with 3 connections for the bulb inside the house. But after our research, with their customers, one of the small tweaks that customers were all very keen on was having 1 bulb actually outside the house for the door, because that is a source of security if there's light outside the house as opposed to all the lights being inside. And so henceforth, the company actually just made that tweak, and there was significantly higher customer satisfaction and reduced challenge rates among customers who are actually trying to make that change themselves. So I just think that through the other examples that we heard on this webinar, I think there's tremendous value to collecting that customer feedback upfront to help the design process and iterate along with it. But then even once the product is launched and perhaps in some sense mature, collecting that customer feedback and having metrics to track over time, always provides insights that you can use to improve customer experience.
Thank you for this answer. What do you see is the role that product design can play in increasing or generating livelihoods income? Who would like to take this question?
Yeah, I'll just jump in for a little bit, Jackie. So I think it's a really good question, because of course when the product R&D is being done, especially if it's being done in a country that's different from where your actual customers are, I think making like a field trip and understanding what's there in the market right now, interviewing and talking to a bunch of customers, so what their needs are. First, sort of identify or shortlist the sector that sort of your design or your product design might have a really big impact on. Like I mentioned, energy, financial inclusion, let's say. So there's a bunch of sectors. So once you shortlist that, let's say we're talking about energy, we've seen that refrigeration again is a hugely untapped market in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. But why isn't if there's a missing market, then why isn't someone capturing it? If there's profit to be made, there's an incentive. Why isn't anyone doing it? First, I think there's a big a product design flaw that sort of people are used to making like AC 220 or 110 volt refrigerators that have two doors that are big in size. And so they sort of they just think that if they change the compressor, if they change the technology to DC, the same product might work in villages, but that's not the case. Mostly in rural areas, people just need a much smaller, like a 1/3 or a 1/4 of the size of the actual refrigerator, to just keep their like milk and some of their vegetables cool. So you can cut down a lot of money on that when you're designing the product. And of course, secondly, you can of course you have to sort of see how to, if I go into the details, how the compartments should be in the refrigerator, and whether the compressor does it have to have that like super efficient, it has to have a super efficient compressor compared to the amount of cooling it is delivering. So just a few random thoughts in my head that we saw in the field when we were going there.
Thank you. And next question, I think it would be for Katheryn, but it's open for all the others also to answer. Katheryn, could you share an example when you develop a product or an appliance that failed because of the needs of customers were not accurately understood, and how you mitigated that?
Yeah, sure. It's actually, the fridge is a good example to look at, because again, it was like a 2 to 3 year R&D journey that we did in partnership with another company they were kind of the world's global leader in design and manufacturing refrigerator compressors, and they wanted to build a product specifically for the African markets. They knew it needed to be they wanted to be a pay-as-you-go solar powered asset. And it was very interesting, because when we were doing a lot of the market research and kind of testing different iterations of the prototype, very much, we were kind of testing 2 different sizes. One was like a 50-liter fridge, and the other one was a 100-liter fridge. And when we would go do market surveys or kind of give different prototypes to customers and we ask them, like, okay, well, which model do you prefer? They would always select the 50-liter fridge because it was cheaper. So we thought, okay, great. And actually this matches up with about, the volume that's needed for a customer's kind of storage needs, about, storing all their perishable goods, because customers tended to be frequent shoppers. They weren't buying, a week's worth of groceries at a time. They were buying like for 1 or 2 days. So MKR was very confident that it would go to market with a 50-liter refrigerator. It was a, lower price point product. We assimilated what was like a mock commercial launch. So we were giving it to our sales agents. They were going out, they were selling and marketing it, and no one was buying the fridge. And in fact, if we had actually a few customers, we sold the fridge to them on the phone. They would go into the shop, and a couple of times a customer came in, cash in hand, looked at the fridge and said, "Oh, it's so small. I'm not buying that." And we recognized in this instant that I was like, okay, previously we were doing market research. When customers were given a choice between a larger size and a smaller size, they defaulted to the smaller size because of the lower price point, because of the choice. But we recognized is actually what they really wanted was a larger size. And so it wasn't a total failure. What we did is we very much kind of put our nose to the grindstone, and we looked to see about how we could get the product cost down for that larger size. And actually a couple more kind of iterations and testing and supply chain analysis, we were able to bring that larger size to market at the same price point as a smaller fridge. And that was fundamental, because if we hadn't been able to do that cost down exercise, then we would not have been able to I don't think the fridge would have taken off as it has. It still isn't like our fastest growing product, but it certainly was a good lesson for us, that you really kind of need to get into kind of actually what are the key drivers of a customer's purchasing behavior.
Thank you, Katheryn. Yeah, we have one question from Alec Womo. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. Is asking, besides innovation of new products, what can be done to improve literacy in the off-grid sector, especially regarding system sizing? most end users in low income settings, for example, don't size their system, which lowers efficiency. Maybe Katheryn, do you want to share something with Alec Woman?
Can you repeat the question? I'm just not totally sure.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
It's saying, besides innovation of new products, what can be done to improve literacy in the off-grid sector, especially regarding system sizing?
Right. So this is literacy in terms of like customers' understanding of wattage and capacity, or?
Yeah, I guess it's asking more about the how to improve literacy of the end users, no?
Okay.
Their understanding.
Size.
It seems like a tricky question, Alec Woman.
Yeah, I'll just share our experience if you want, Jackie,
Yeah.
Katheryn, if I.
Perfect.
That'd be
Yeah.
helpful, yeah, because I was gonna say I actually need to jump in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, so what happened is in Pakistan, like I mentioned, Pakistan and India, fans are demand drivers. So we saw that initially, the standard products that market leaders like D-Lite and Sun King were making for East Africa, like 12 watt or 20, 30 watt systems, or even 40 watt systems that were able to run a television, 2, 3 lights and all. They did not really work here at all because, the fan consumes so much power and people need to run the fan for at least 15 hours a day. So it has to have a big battery. It has to have a bigger solar panel. And again, on the other side, what was happening in the market was that people were using these really inefficient, like bad motors, fans run by really bad motors, like consuming 50 watt of powers on DC. And they were running them on like 150 watt, 170 watt solar panel, like low quality panel. So there's this perception that, bigger solar panel gives you more energy, even though the qualities that they're using, they don't give you such a reliable energy. But then when we went to the ground, it was really hard for us to explain to them because we only sell IEC certified products. So we had to tell them that this 80 watt solar panel with an LFP battery gives you as much of energy service as a 150 watt low quality solar panel and a flooded lead acid battery, because you have to, when you have to convince people, what kind of value they're getting out of their products, like number of hours that the fan runs rather than the wattage and the size of the solar panel. And I think that's where how you communicate that in a local language. Let's say, for example, we use this example that, bigger is not always better. These days, smartphones can do much more than desktop computers, right? Even though they're much smaller in size. So you have to sort of use these innovative examples to explain the concept to them.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think actually, one good way to kind of really unpack customers' exact energy needs is think about to gamify it a bit, right? That was actually the photo I showed for the observations and games, was actually an exercise that we did around actually what are the product features that and the size of the fridge that customers would actually want. Because fair to say, there's always going to be a balance between power and price, right? Customers may say like, oh, they want this and this and this, they want a system that can power a fan or a refrigerator, TV, and all this stuff. And they're like, okay, well, actually, it's going to cost this much to get it. And then it's like, okay, wait. And then you can actually start to think about, you can use blocks or something or different games to really kind of figure out what's the willingness to pay for each of these appliances they might put behind it. And then that can help you kind of figure out actually what is the system size relative to the kind of with their wallet size. And also kind of what efficiency gains would you need to make to actually give them the sort of power they demand at the price that they can afford. And I'll also add, thank you so much again for inviting me to attend this session. I do need to jump for another call. But thank you again, Jacqueline, and good luck to all the students for your challenge. Okay.
Thank you, Katheryn.
Bye. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye. We are getting to the end of the webinar, and I want to say a big thanks to all speakers again and to all attendees. We value your feedback and we are very keen to hear from you on your opinion and assessment of this webinar. And this is the way you can help us to improve for future webinars. We have prepared a short survey that will take you just 1 minute to respond. It will pop out on your screens when this webinar is finished. And if you are using a device that is not compatible with this feature, you can use the link that we will share together with the recording and the presentation slides with your academics. At this point, I just want to remind you that a recording of this webinar will be available on the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge website in case you want to revisit some of the examples and interesting information you've listened here today. Next week, we have a series of webinars on different technologies. We start on Monday with an overview of the healthcare appliance sector and 2 interesting examples from Uganda and Nepal. It will take place on Monday at 1 p.m. UK time. Thank you all and see you on our next webinar.
Thank you, Jackie. Good luck to everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jackie, and same here. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.